This is HOA Neighbor Court. The boundary line turned into a public humiliation attempt. I will make sure the neighbors see this. Colleen Stewart pointed at my fence-top rail and screamed that the profile was wrong and she had a chart. She held the laminated sheet between us like a shield and aimed her laser measuring tool at the rail cap. I work as a cybersecurity analyst. I save every email and timestamp, and I knew this fence passed inspection 2 days ago. She did not care. She snapped the laser on and off, then jabbed her finger at the sheet. The profile is beveled, she said. Your rail is flat. That is a violation. I live in Portland, Oregon, in a neighborhood called Cypress Point Estates Association, a place where every backyard upgrade becomes a committee argument. I bought the house 6 months ago because the commute was short and the price was fair. The HOA paperwork mentioned fence standards, but nothing about rail profiles. I hired a licensed contractor, pulled permits, and installed a 6-foot cedar privacy fence along my back property line. The city inspector signed off. I thought I was done. Colleen is the special assessment coordinator. She threatens sudden new charges whenever someone questions her. She wears a gray baseball cap most days, but today she had the hood up on her white jacket and the badge clip hanging off her belt with nothing readable on it. She tapped the laminated sheet again. This is the approved profile chart, she said. Your contractor did not follow it. You have 7 days to correct it or the fine starts at $500. I asked to see the chart up close. She pulled it back. You can request a copy through the management company, she said. Keep talking, I love adding notes. She pulled out her phone and started typing. I asked when the profile rule went into effect. She said it had always been policy. I asked why my contractor had never seen it. She said ignorance is not an excuse. My contractor, a calm guy named Mike, was standing by his truck with a set of keys on a carabiner clipped to his belt. He walked over and asked to see the measuring tool. Colleen ignored him. She turned to me and said the truck was parked illegally. Mike said it was on the street, fully legal. Colleen said it was commercial activity and she was calling a tow truck. She pulled out her phone again. Mike looked at me, then back at her. He said he had installed 40 fences in this neighborhood and no one had ever mentioned a profile chart. Colleen said the rules had been updated. She did not say when. She aimed the laser at the rail again and said the height was also questionable. Mike pulled out his own tape measure and checked. 6 feet exactly. Colleen said the measurement had to be from grade, not from the footer trench. Mike said the city inspector had already confirmed it. Colleen said the city inspector does not enforce HOA rules. I asked for a copy of the updated rules. She said they were available at the clubhouse during business hours. I asked what hours. She said weekdays 9 to 4. I work nights, and I cannot just drop everything during the day. She smiled and said that was my problem. Keep talking, I love adding notes. The survey stakes keep getting moved, and I need daylight photos before it happens again. I noticed one stake had shifted 2 feet overnight. I assumed an animal or a kid, but when I checked my doorbell camera the next morning, I saw Colleen walking the property line at dawn with a clipboard. The footage showed her bending down near the corner stake. I could not see exactly what she did, but the stake was in a different spot when I got home. I printed stills from the video and saved them to a folder. I am a cybersecurity analyst. I archive everything. I also set up a second camera angle covering the back corner. If she moved another stake, I would have 2 feeds showing it. Mike finished the fence 3 days after Colleen's first visit. He left the job site clean, tools packed, truck gone by 5. That evening I got a letter in my mailbox. It was from the HOA, typed on official letterhead. It said I had violated setback requirements and the fence had to be moved back 18 inches. The letter included a diagram with hand-drawn lines and measurements that did not match the survey I had paid for. The deadline was 10 days. I called the management company. They said Colleen had submitted the complaint and the board had reviewed it. I asked if the board had seen my survey. The woman on the phone said she did not know. I asked for the board meeting minutes. She said they were not available yet. I asked when they would be. She said within 30 days. I emailed Colleen and copied the board. I attached my survey, the city permit, and the inspection report. I asked for clarification on the setback claim. She replied within an hour. Your camera does not matter. My minutes are the truth. She said the survey was outdated, and the HOA had its own measurements. She said I had 9 days left. I called a lawyer. He listened and said HOA disputes take months and cost thousands. He suggested I attend the next board meeting and present my evidence in person. The meeting was 2 weeks away. I asked what I should do in the meantime. He said keep everything documented and do not tear down the fence. That night I reviewed the doorbell footage again. I caught 3 separate clips of Colleen walking my property line. In one clip, she was holding the laser measuring tool and pointing it at the fence corner. In another, she was on her phone. In the third, she bent down near the stake and stood up with something in her hand. I could not see what it was, but the stake looked different after she walked away. I sent the clips to my lawyer. He said it was good evidence, but we needed more. He said if she moved a stake again, we could argue tampering. I asked what that would do. He said it might void her complaint. Might. The next morning I woke up to a voicemail from the management company. The board had voted to issue a stop work order on my fence. I said the fence was already done. The voicemail said any modifications or repairs required pre-approval. I called back and asked what that meant. The receptionist said Colleen had reported I was planning to add a gate. I was not planning to add a gate. I said that. She said the board had to be cautious. I drove to the clubhouse. Colleen was in the parking lot talking to another homeowner. I walked up and asked about the stop work order. She turned and smiled. Your contractor is not authorized to return, she said. If his truck shows up again, I will have it towed. I asked on what grounds. She said commercial vehicles are not allowed on residential streets for extended periods. I asked what extended means. She said more than 2 hours. I asked where that rule was written. She said in the updated guidelines. I asked for a copy of the updated guidelines. She said they were being finalized. I asked when they would be available. She said soon. I asked how I was supposed to follow rules that were not published. She said that was my problem. Keep talking. I love adding notes. The other homeowner, a guy in his 50s with a graying beard, stepped closer. He said this happened to him too. He said Colleen had accused him of violating a setback rule 2 years ago, and he had to hire a surveyor to prove her wrong. He said she never apologized. Colleen turned and walked into the clubhouse. The guy gave me his number and said if I needed a witness, he would show up. I went home and pulled every HOA document I had, the original CC&Rs, the bylaws, the architectural guidelines, the amendment history. I could not find any mention of fence rail profiles. I could not find any updated setback requirements. I could not find any rule about commercial vehicles. I called the management company again and asked for a complete copy of the current rules. The receptionist said she would email them. I asked when. She said within a week. That night I could not sleep. My job is on the line because the HOA chaos keeps interrupting my work and sleep. I work night shifts monitoring security alerts. I need to be sharp. Instead, I am checking my phone every 10 minutes for HOA emails and doorbell notifications. I filed 3 incident tickets late because I was distracted. My supervisor sent a warning. I explained the situation. He said personal issues could not interfere with response times. I said I understood. I did not play my hand yet, and she thought that meant I had none. I had spent 2 weeks quietly pulling HOA financial records. Public records in Oregon require HOAs to disclose budgets and expenditures on request. I submitted a formal request through the management company. It took them 8 days to respond. When the records arrived, I noticed something strange. Colleen had approved 3 special assessments in the past year. Each one was under $5,000, just below the threshold that required a full membership vote. The line items were vague. Fence compliance audit. Property line verification. Landscape remediation. I cross-referenced the dates with board meeting minutes I had downloaded from the HOA website. None of the special assessments were mentioned in the minutes. I pulled the HOA bank statements. 2 of the checks had been written to a surveying company I had never heard of. I looked up the company online. The website was a single page with no projects listed and a phone number that went to voicemail. I called my lawyer again. He said it looked like selective enforcement and possible misuse of funds. He said if I could prove Colleen was using HOA money to target specific homeowners, the board would have to act. He said I needed a smoking gun. I said I was working on it. The next day I got another letter. This one said I was being fined $500 for failure to correct the fence profile. The letter said the fine would double every 7 days until compliance. I called the management company. The receptionist said the fine was valid and I could appeal at the next board meeting. I said the meeting was still 10 days away. She said that was the process. I emailed the entire board and attached my survey, the city permit, the inspection report, and a summary of the financial records I had pulled. I said I wanted an emergency hearing. One board member replied and said emergency hearings were only for safety issues. I said this was financial misconduct. He did not reply. Colleen showed up at my house the next morning. She knocked on the door at 7. I answered in my work clothes, ready to log on for my shift. She had a clipboard and the laser measuring tool. She said she was conducting a follow-up inspection. I asked if she had given notice. She said the bylaws allowed spot inspections. I asked to see that section. She held up the clipboard. It is right here, she said. I could not read the text from where I stood. She walked to the back fence and aimed the laser at the top rail again. She took photos with her phone. I followed her and took my own photos with my phone. She said I was interfering with an official inspection. I said I was documenting it. She said that was intimidation. I said it was transparency. She turned and walked to the side gate. She tried the latch. It was locked. She said gates had to remain accessible for inspections. I said that was not in the rules. She said it was implied. She walked to the front yard and measured the distance from the fence corner to the property line. She wrote something on the clipboard. I asked what she was measuring. She said the setback. I said the survey already confirmed the setback. She said the survey was wrong. I asked how she knew. She said she had her own measurements. I asked to see them. She said they were private. She left without another word. I went inside and logged on for my shift. I had 6 alerts waiting. I cleared 4 of them in the first hour. The 5th one required a call to a client. I was on the phone when another doorbell notification came through. I ignored it. The call took 30 minutes. When I checked the notification, I saw Colleen had returned with a tow truck. Mike had come back to drop off a toolbox he had left in my garage. His truck was parked on the street, fully legal. Colleen was talking to the tow driver and pointing at the truck. The driver looked confused. He said the truck was not blocking anything. Colleen said it was a commercial vehicle in violation of HOA rules. The driver said he needed to see a written complaint. Colleen held up her clipboard. The driver shook his head. He said he needed something from the management company or the police. Colleen called someone on her phone. I walked outside. Mike was standing by his truck with his arms crossed. He said Colleen had told him he was banned from the neighborhood. I said that was not true. Colleen hung up and said the management company was sending authorization. The driver said he would wait. He leaned against his truck and pulled out his phone. I asked Colleen if she had notified the board about this. She said she did not need to. I asked if she had evidence that Mike violated any rule. She said his presence was evidence. I asked what rule. She said commercial activity. I asked her to define commercial activity. She said work performed for pay. I said Mike was not working, he was picking up a toolbox. She said intent to work was enough. Mike said he was calling his supervisor. He stepped away and made the call. The tow driver checked his phone and said he had not received anything from the management company. Colleen said it was coming. She turned to me. "If you allow this contractor back on your property, you will be fined for non-compliance," she said. I said I would take my chances. Mike hung up. His supervisor told him to leave and avoid any confrontation. Mike said he would pick up the toolbox later. He got in his truck and drove away. The tow driver left right after. Colleen stayed. She walked to my fence corner again and took more photos. I stood on my porch and took my own photos of her taking photos. She looked up at me. "Your camera does not matter. My minutes are the truth," she said. I said we would see about that. She walked to her car and drove away. That evening, I got an email from the management company. It said I was being scheduled for a compliance hearing in 3 days. The email listed 4 alleged violations: incorrect fence profile, setback encroachment, unauthorized contractor activity, obstruction of HOA inspection. The email said failure to attend would result in automatic penalties. I replied and said I would attend. I attached everything I had: survey, permit, inspection report, financial records, doorbell videos, timeline of Colleen's property line visits. The email bounced back. The attachment size was too large. I split it into 3 emails and resent. One went through. The other 2 bounced again. I uploaded everything to a cloud drive and sent a link. No reply. I called my lawyer. He said the hearing was a setup. He said the board was stacking the deck and I needed to be ready to fight. He said I should bring hard copies of everything and request that the evidence be read into the minutes. He said that would make it official and harder for them to ignore. If you are enjoying this story, hit the like button and subscribe for more wild HOA revenge tales, where the paper trail always wins. I printed 200 pages. Survey maps, photos, financial records, email chains, doorbell stills. I organized them into binders with tabs. I printed a second set in case they tried to confuse me with procedural tricks. I practiced my opening statement. I timed it. 4 minutes. I practiced again. 3.5 minutes. I wanted it tight. The hearing was at the clubhouse at 7 on a Thursday. I arrived 15 minutes early. The parking lot was full. I saw Colleen's car near the entrance. I parked at the back and carried my binders inside. The meeting room was set up with a long table at the front and rows of chairs facing it. About 30 people were in the room. Most of them were there for other agenda items. The board sat at the front table. Colleen sat to the side with her own stack of papers. The board president called the meeting to order. He went through routine business, budget updates, landscaping bids, pool maintenance. 40 minutes passed. Then he called my case. I stood and walked to the front. He asked me to summarize the issue. I said I had installed a fence with proper permits and inspections, and the HOA was now claiming multiple violations that were not supported by the rules or the facts. Colleen stood. She said the violations were documented and the homeowner had been given multiple opportunities to comply. She said I had obstructed her inspections and allowed unauthorized contractors on the property. She said the fence profile was incorrect and the setback was encroached. She held up her clipboard and her laser measuring tool. She said her measurements were definitive. I asked the board if they had reviewed my evidence. The president said they had received my emails but had not had time to review everything. I said I had submitted it a week ago. He said they were volunteers and they were doing their best. I asked if I could present it now. He said I had 5 minutes. I opened the first binder. I showed the survey. I showed the city permit. I showed the inspection report. I showed the financial records. I pointed out the 3 special assessments Colleen had approved without board discussion. I pointed out the surveying company with no traceable projects. I asked the board if they had authorized those payments. The president looked at the treasurer. The treasurer said she would have to check. I showed the doorbell videos. I said Colleen had been on my property line multiple times without notice. I said she had been photographed near the survey stakes on dates when the stakes were later found moved. I said I had time-stamped evidence. Colleen interrupted. She said I was making accusations without proof. I said the proof was in the video. She said the video was edited. I said it was raw footage with metadata. I asked for the evidence to be read into the minutes so it becomes official. The president said that was not necessary. I said I wanted it on the record. He sighed and asked the secretary to note it. The secretary typed something on her laptop. I continued. I said the fence profile rule Colleen kept citing did not exist in any published guidelines. I said I had requested the updated rules multiple times and had never received them. I said the setback claim was contradicted by a licensed surveyor. I said the contractor ban was arbitrary and unsupported. I said the compliance hearing itself was scheduled without proper notice and was clearly retaliatory. Colleen stood again. She said I was wasting everyone's time. She said the violations were clear and the penalties were justified. She said if I refused to comply, the fines would continue to escalate. She said the board had a duty to enforce the rules. She looked at the president. He nodded. I pulled out the final document. It was a letter from a city inspector confirming what the HOA cannot enforce. The inspector had reviewed the fence, the permit, the survey, and the HOA complaint. He wrote that the fence met all city codes and that the HOA could not impose stricter standards without proper notice and ratification by the membership. He wrote that moving survey stakes was a civil offense and possibly criminal if intent could be shown. He wrote that the HOA was overstepping its authority. I read the letter aloud. The room was silent. Colleen stood and said the city inspector had no jurisdiction over HOA rules. I said the city inspector had jurisdiction over fence codes, and the HOA was claiming my fence violated codes that do not exist. I said if the HOA wanted to enforce a profile rule, they needed to amend the CC and Rs and get a membership vote. I said they had not done that. I said the setback claim was factually wrong. I said the contractor ban was made up. I said Colleen had been caught on video tampering with evidence. The president asked Colleen if she had moved the stakes. She said she had not. I played the video on my laptop and turned the screen toward the board. The clip showed her bending down near the corner stake. The timestamp was visible. I froze the frame and zoomed in. The stake was in one position before she crouched. It was in a different position after she stood. The board president leaned forward. He asked Colleen to explain. She said she had been checking the stake, not moving it. I said the photos I had taken before and after her visit showed a 2-foot shift. I passed printed stills to the board. The treasurer looked at the president. She said this was serious. The president said they would need to investigate. I said I had already investigated. I said the financial records showed a pattern of selective enforcement tied to missing funds. I said Colleen had approved 3 special assessments with vague line items and payments to a shell company. I said the board had never discussed those assessments in any meeting. I said I wanted a full audit. Colleen turned red. She said I was making defamatory accusations. I said I was stating facts supported by public records. I said if she wanted to sue me for defamation, she could try. I said I would countersue for harassment and abuse of process. The room was completely silent. Someone coughed. A chair scraped. I turned to the board. I said I was requesting that the HOA remove the enforcement action and void the ledger entry. I said I was requesting that Colleen be removed from any role involving compliance or financial decisions. I said I was requesting a full forensic audit of the special assessments. I said if the board refused, I would file a complaint with the state and retain counsel for a lawsuit. The president looked at Colleen. She sat down. He looked at the treasurer. She nodded. He looked at the other board members. One of them, a woman in her 60s, said she had never heard of a fence profile rule. Another said he had never seen the surveying company Colleen had paid. A third said the whole situation looked bad and the board needed to act. The president said they would take a vote. He asked for a motion to remove the violations and void the fines. The woman in her 60s made the motion. The man who questioned the surveying company seconded it. The vote was 4-1. Colleen abstained. The president said the motion passed. He said the HOA removes the enforcement action and voids the ledger entry. Colleen stood. She said the board was making a mistake. She said I had manipulated the evidence. She said the video was edited and the financial records were taken out of context. The president said the video had metadata and the financial records were public. He said the board had a fiduciary duty to investigate. He asked for a motion to suspend Colleen from her role as special assessment coordinator pending an audit. The woman in her 60s made the motion. The man seconded it again. The vote was 5-0. Colleen did not abstain this time. She was outvoted. Karen is outvoted so hard the room laughs. Someone in the back row laughed. Then someone else. Then a few more. Colleen grabbed her clipboard and her laser measuring tool and walked out. The door slammed. The president said the meeting would continue. He said the board would hire an independent auditor and report findings at the next meeting. He said any homeowner with concerns about selective enforcement should submit a written complaint. I sat down. The guy with the graying beard who had told me about his own run-in with Colleen leaned over. He said I did good. He said he wished he had fought harder. I said it was not over yet. He said it felt over. The meeting wrapped up an hour later. I walked out to the parking lot. A few people stopped me and said thank you. One woman said Colleen had threatened her over a mailbox color 2 years ago, and she had just repainted it to avoid the hassle. Another guy said Colleen had tried to fine him for parking his boat in his driveway. He said he had fought it and won, but it took 6 months. He said he was glad someone had finally called her out in public. I drove home and poured a drink. I sat on my back porch and looked at the fence. It was straight, solid, and exactly where it was supposed to be. The post caps were clean. The rails were level. The city inspector had signed off. Colleen's laser measuring tool and her laminated chart meant nothing. The next morning, I got an email from the management company. It said the board had voted to retain a forensic accountant. It said the audit would take 4 to 6 weeks. It said Colleen had been removed from all compliance and financial rules effective immediately. It said if I had any additional evidence, I should submit it to the auditor. I replied and attached the rest of the financial records I had pulled, along with a detailed timeline of Colleen's property line visits and the doorbell footage. I included the surveying company name and the phone number that went to voicemail. I included copies of the emails I had sent to the board that had bounced back. I said I was available to answer any questions. 3 weeks later, the auditor sent a preliminary report to the board. The board president forwarded it to all homeowners. The report confirmed that Colleen had approved 3 special assessments without proper board discussion. The report confirmed that 2 of the checks had been written to a surveying company with no traceable work product. The report confirmed that the 3rd check had been written to a landscaping company that had done work on Colleen's own property. The report recommended that the board pursue reimbursement and consider legal action. The board called a special meeting. Colleen did not attend. The board voted to demand full reimbursement from Colleen. They voted to refer the matter to the HOA attorney for possible civil action. They voted to amend the bylaws to require full board approval for any special assessment over $1,000. They voted to implement quarterly financial reviews. They voted to ban Colleen from serving on any committee or holding any board position. The vote on the ban was unanimous. The board president read the motion aloud. The room applauded. I was not at that meeting. I was at work, monitoring alerts, finally catching up on my ticket queue. My supervisor sent me a message. He said my response times had improved. He said whatever had been distracting me seemed to have resolved. I said it had. He said good. That weekend, I was in my backyard staining the fence. The post caps were drying in the sun. I had a cold drink and a podcast playing. A neighbor I had never met walked over and introduced himself. He said he had heard about the board meeting. He said he was sorry I had to go through all that. He said Colleen had been a problem for years and no one had been willing to stand up to her. He said a lot of people were relieved. I asked if he had ever had trouble with her. He said she had threatened to fine him over a trampoline in his backyard. He said she claimed it was an unapproved structure. He said he ignored her and she eventually dropped it. He said he wished he had documented it. I said documentation was everything. He nodded and went back to his yard. 2 months after the board meeting, I got a letter from the HOA attorney. It said Colleen had agreed to reimburse the association for the fraudulent special assessments. It said she had signed a settlement agreement that included a permanent ban from any HOA role and a no-contact order. It said if she violated the terms, the HOA would pursue criminal charges. The letter said the matter was closed. I filed the letter with the rest of my HOA documents. I had 3 binders now: survey records, financial records, legal correspondence. I kept them in a filing cabinet in my office. I hoped I would never need them again, but I knew better than to throw them away. A few weeks later, I was walking past the community entrance sign with no readable text. A small group of neighbors was standing there talking. I recognized a few faces from the meetings. One of them waved me over. They were discussing the upcoming HOA board election. The woman in her 60s who had made the motions at my hearing was running for president. She said she wanted to clean up the culture and make the HOA more transparent. She asked if I would support her. I said I would. She said she was going to win. I believed her. The fence is still standing. The profile is flat, not beveled. The setback is exactly where the survey says it is. The city inspector's letter is framed in my garage. Colleen moved out of the neighborhood 6 months after the settlement. I heard she bought a condo in a building with no HOA. I hope she is happier there. I still save every email and timestamp. I still check my doorbell camera. I still keep my binders up to date. My job is on track. My supervisor gave me a positive review. My shifts are calmer. I sleep better. The chaos is over, but the lesson is permanent. In any fight, evidence wins. Cameras win. Receipts win. And when someone says your camera does not matter and their minutes are the truth, you make sure everyone hears exactly what the truth really is. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.